for this episode of Mr. Nailsin's Wednesday Comics, I'm only going to talk about comics that I actually read. That's what I do all the time, of course. But I bought a bunch of comics and really only found time to complete the, 4 titles that I'll discuss here. This is World's Finest presents Teen Titans. So here's the original Titans, reimagined for the more or less modern era, because they're kids and so they're all about viral videos. Well, mostly Speedy is, but it's grounded. It's Mark Waid's doing it, so it's grounded in the same storytelling templates of World's Finest, which instantly makes it pretty good. There's a little bit too much of, maybe it's just me that I would have rathered it be more of an adventure, but this is more about setting up the relationships that they have here. Primarily this Robin and Speedy being at odds. Speedy seems to be more inclined for the fame and all that and the adulation and stuff. The others are kind of falling prey to it as well, because there's all these people who are very grateful to them when they save their lives from monsters and stuff like that. But the chief problem Robin has is with Speedy. Meanwhile, they do this scene where they go to their mentors, and Kid Flash visits Barry and talking about the team. And he's like, well, all right, that sounds good. And Diana and Donna talk about all this. And same thing with Aqualad and Aquaman. Batman, of course, is not interested, doesn't think it's a good idea. And the primary problem of Robin is wants to be a part of this team. He's become the leader and all of that because that's, and he's the tactical guy. He's been trained by Batman. So they follow his lead on how to address whatever opponents they face. But Batman is very secretive and whatnot, and so the rest of them all know their secret identities, but they don't know who Robin is. Which have you ever seen Dick Grayson? Have you ever seen him in sunglasses? But nevertheless, you go with it. And that becomes a breaking point where Robin is making a good point that Speedy's not taking this seriously enough, and that but then Speedy counters, well, why should we listen to you? You don't trust us enough to share your real name and stuff. And it's and that's because Batman told him, don't do that. You don't really know these kids and you can't trust them with a secret that serious or what have you. Because Batman's paranoid by nature. And so, but eventually, they're they're all going to know who he is and that sort of thing. But nevertheless, it's also that business of, hey, eventually we know there's a split between Dick Grayson and Bruce Wayne. They get over it and they become friends again later. But what's the inspiration for it, what pushes it, and the desire for him to eventually become Nightwing and that sort of thing. So it plays out here. Meanwhile, because a lot of this is a reimagining or approaching stories for these different characters and how they turned out. Which is well established for the most part. And whenever you do reboots or whatever, a lot of those elements still remain because they were just too good. Tell to start over. Anything could happen. Well, this is going to stay put. This is going to, that kind of thing. And most notably with Speedy here. And he's all, devil may care attitude and all this. You're taking it too seriously, Dick. And Robin doesn't know he's Dick Grayson. And when they do the mentors thing, there's a scene here. Oh, look, he's talking to Oliver Queen. And it speaks to a certain aspect of loneliness. I guess I won't spoil it entirely. But if you know your history of Speedy Arrow and what he went through, he eventually succumbs to drug addiction. And I think perhaps it's setting up more of a backstory as to why, what would lead him to that, and that sort of thing. So it's not as good as World's Finest. I wouldn't say that, but it's easily, it's a cousin to it, and that's a good thing. That's an improvement of the line. I assumed this was a one-shot, but the way it ends, I guess there's an issue too. So we'll follow up on that. Meanwhile, back at World's Finest proper, they still have their huge battle with New Mazo, and it seems impossible. But of course, Batman and the like, they figure it out. It's really a Justice League story with, of course, Superman and Batman at front, which is usually the way it is anyway. And because this is very serious all-out battle, it cleans up at the end a little too much in the sense that this looked very, very serious, because it seemed, the panel seemed to indicate that New Mazo had killed an awful lot of people. And it says, oh, well, they got to it in time. And so, well, okay. But I mean, the stakes are very, very high for what this villain had done. And so the way they figured out, it makes a lot of sense in how it works out. So it's not like, oh, come on. No. So it all works out. And once again, World's Finest delivers. And they have the battle here and all that. And hey, he's becoming Terminator. Well, it's kind of the same idea. So after all that, there's a tease to an even perhaps greater story that was teased earlier concerning Boy Thunder and what his future is and how it connects to a popular story that Mark Waid had something to do with. And so that's interesting. And I don't know if that's how, because I kept hearing that Dan Moore and Mark Waid are leaving the book. They're going to be concentrating more on Shazam, maybe a few other things. And it's like, oh man, this is not going to be as good as it was because the team won't be there. But it's still trucking along quite a bit. So I don't know how many more issues that they're going to keep doing, but pretty good. And between this and Teen Titans, that was a nice, good run here, and not ruined by the idiocy detour of Night Terrors. Which there's little teases and advertisements in it and showing pages from it. And I just don't care, especially since that's the type of story you could do in one issue, maybe two. And just look, come on, the events. The best thing to do, scrap everything and learn from the templates of this title. And you'd have something. Maybe too late, though. I don't know. But, well, what are you going to do? So we'll save the best for last and get this out of the way. The Action Comics, and of course Action Comics, originally an anthology. I think it's a good idea that they continue here with backstories. But in this case, one of the backstories far outshines the main story. So instead of New Mazo, they're taking on Cyborg Superman. And for the most part, some of that plot, that's fine. It's pretty good. I just think Superman's hindered by he's just an ensemble. It's the Superman team within his own storyline. I guess that's just the way it's going to continue. And for the Superman title, it'll be primarily just Superman. But he's got these twins from World. He's got his own son. He's got two other different Superboys. Steel hangs around and helps out and all that. Poor Steel, there's a backup story for him, and that's going to spin off into its own title. It's terrible. It's just very flat, slap job stuff, both in writing and art, and it's just no good. I mean, could you give him a case to solve or an adventure or something? But it's all this setup about his company and who are you really and that kind of stuff. And I don't know. I guess Power Girl was still worse than that. I don't know if that spun off into its own title, God forbid, but that was awful. So I guess Steel's a little bit better than that, but not by much. But it's not a part of this series anymore. But the one that, like I said, outshines even the main story here with Superman and his super kids is this flashback to the days that Superman and Lois were living on the farm, raising John in seclusion. It doesn't quite follow the narrative well, since that was all multiverse shenanigans, and the real Superman was the younger New 52 Superman, but then he died. So old Superman got back, which is why he's wearing this suit to differentiate himself from when he was hiding out. I don't know how they weave that in. Now it's just, hey, they thought it was best to get away from it all for the benefit of Jonathan. So there's something to be said for that. It's kind of like the premise of the TV show, where they took the kids to the farm. They thought that was a better environment for them and all that sort of stuff. So that's, that is the premise. But the main thing here is Dan Jurgens, who was doing great work with Superman before Bendis came in and destroyed it. And he should have been in charge of Superman in total. He understands it and knows it. And if anyone can follow up what Mark Waid and Dan Mora established with World's Finest, he certainly could. And a good artist partner would be Lee Weeks. His art, it just puts all the others, especially in this book, to shame. And this should be the main focus of it. And just Superman as a father, you can see he's depicted much older than you usually see him. And because, he's a father now, and that's the story. He's going to go save his son from this crazy alien princess and all that. And you can see where they're kind of coming to the same conclusion. He's hoping Jonathan, he doesn't know where he is on this planet, and all that sort of stuff. But there's an interesting story where he remembers what his dad's taught him, and he understands how to get out of the situation he's in for him to come rescue him. So it's good, and it's just a shame it's not the main Superman story, but it's right there. It's right there. It's more than likely not going to happen. So, and that's pretty much the template they should have just stayed with. I mean, Damian Wayne's been 10 years old for a very long time, longer than Jonathan. And so they could have done the same for Superman and his son. And that worked out much better than just stuff switched around with all kinds of shenanigans, slapped in with shoehorned politics and whatnot, and exploited for that, to the detriment, because there was no compelling stories or anything about it. And it was just done like that. But, well, what's done is done, I guess. But anyway, so really Action Comics only is this story here. Which, again, is just a return to a series they did earlier on where they were explaining, oh, look, the pre-52 Superman survived and all that. So even though it's really good and I like it, it would be better if this was just the Superman stories overall. So I finally found time to finish volume 2 of the Magic Order, slowly but surely catching up on that series, which I think is currently in its 4th volume. So I got a ways to go. And yeah, I might have enjoyed this one better than the first volume. It's really close because, well, style and everything. But it's an interesting turnabout because even though the ending, it's all hopeless, they can't possibly win, and then they do, and it's not come on. No, it's just, well, the villains didn't catch, they didn't, dot all the T's and cross the T's and dot all the I's. No, they dotted the T's. See, they should have crossed it. And I mean, ultimately it's like, the little girl's going to save the day. And no, she doesn't. But it does give you an indication of what the problem was and how the villain messes up. But it gives more background to the lore and stuff about what happened. That there used to be that all the myths about magic and stuff were true. It's just these wizards put it into it because it was dangerous for humanity. They would never have survived what the magical creatures could do to them and all of that. And there's a lot of cool visuals here, some Lovecraftian stuff too. And that's all well and good. But the one who does save the day, this is a vehicle for redemption for a broken man and all this sort of stuff. And that I understand. I just don't see him as deserving of redemption. And there's a lot of that at the ending about him and how they're going to care for him for what he did. And you say, oh boy, you know, he was dealing with his issues and stuff. And no. I mean, but he did save them all and that sort of thing. So, but still, just at least for the attitudes and whatnot, I don't know that there would have been that much forgiveness for him. So, it's a dark series. A lot of horrific things happen in it and all that. But still, a little too nice to the guy. I realize he saved your lives. But one of you is not there anymore. And well, you know, so, I don't know. But that's more of a bit of a morality take, but I guess it depends on, are these personalities established enough to where that's a more credible response to his actions? I'm not so certain about that. So that's really the only flaw in it. It's a cool narrative. Of course, Mark Millar is top in his game. He's probably the best writer in the field as far as well, these aren't superheroes really, but kind of, but in the genre of fantastic comic book tales, he's easily the best one at the moment. And seems, even though, you know, he chases Netflix, he's got that deal with Netflix and all that sort of stuff, and chasing that, at the same time, he manages to maintain his standards of excellence in his pursuit of the comic book medium, and which is kind of rare. A lot of people that are really good, and they go chasing Hollywood, and again, he's probably the most successful in a lot of ways, but a lot of them, they get burned and stuff. But whatever comic book work they do, kind of, it becomes stale, or they're not as attentive to it. And other people, they're pursuing the comics just for that reason alone, you know, especially in the heyday of the Marvel explosion and all that. It's like, oh, you know, I could get these Hollywood deals and all that stuff. And it doesn't turn out quite the way they would have hoped, I'm sure. But also to the detriment of what made them. In some cases, pretty slap job cheap stuff, but not in the case of Mark Millar or Miller. I never can get it right. But anyway, I enjoyed it. Looking forward to the third one, and we'll delve into that shortly. And so there you go. End on a high note with Magic Order. So thanks for spending some time with me on your Wednesday, and we'll do it again next week here on Mr. Nailsin's Wednesday Comics. Yeah.